G'day guys, Alex here. Welcome to episode 133 of the Trademate Sports Betting Podcast. Today I'm joined by Pro Sports Bettor out of Vegas in America, Shane Sigsbee. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime, mate. Maybe just let people know, obviously professional sports bettor is a pretty general term. Maybe just, let people know how you got to that stage in your life where you became a professional sports bettor, for those who haven't heard of you before. And I guess your approach to betting, there's a few different approaches to being a professional sports bettor. Maybe just sum up, how you guys operate.
Sure. So got to sports betting. I was a derivatives trader in Chicago, coming out of college on the Chicago Board Options Exchange. Left that job in 2008 and kind of followed around the poker circuit for a while. I was kind of like a mid-stakes poker guy, but I was backing guys along the way. And that was kind of the way that I made a living from 2009 to I'm still doing it today, but that was my primary source of income from 2009 to 2013 or 14. And then landed in Vegas via the poker journey in 2012, 2013. And then started, walking through the casinos and stuff and looking at the sports book and kind of looked at it from a trading perspective, similar to what I was doing with options. I'm not much of a sports guy. I'm not like a sports fan or know much about any of the teams, but I was fascinated with that all the different lines were posted at all these different books all around Vegas and, all around the world as well. And different books had different lines on the same event. And, so that kind of caught my attention. And this was back in, 2014 when Vegas was just launching mobile apps and the books were pretty soft. You had just straight ARBs across different platforms. So it was pretty easy to figure out how to gain a small edge then. And that has kind of grown into what it is today. I brought on a few traders and we don't do any handicapping at all. I couldn't name you a player on most of the teams we bet on. We're considered what's called a top-down approach, which is definitely an approach a lot of people take. We do work with some originators that are able to handicap it and beat certain sports. But for our own internal trading, we're literally just trading numbers. It's team A versus team B to us, and we're just trading prices.
Yeah. So for those who don't understand, you're just literally betting the market, like I guess you would with, something like the stock market or, something similar to that. It's just, all based around numbers. It's got nothing to do with, I guess, your opinion on a sports game. Like if you think, team A is going to beat team B.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it would be like if a stock was traded on, 50, if Apple stock was traded on 50 different stock exchanges rather than just being traded on the NASDAQ. We try to find discrepancies between all those different exchanges and make money that way.
Yeah. So how many people overall are working in your group of traders? And I guess how do you, organize schedules and, maybe dividing up certain sports and kind of working out all the, like practical side of things.
Yeah. So we have 3 traders. In non-football season, we really just need one guy on at all times. It doesn't really require all of us. On a busy college basketball Saturday in the spring, we'll have, or late winter, early spring, we'll have multiple people on. But the rest of the year, like baseball season, is just a one-person job, and we're taking a lot of time off during the day. It's really right before the games go and early morning is kind of when we're trading baseball. But football season's busy. I mean, it's all day, every day during the week, trying to get in early into prices. And then it's all hands on deck on Saturday and Sunday morning. So football season is definitely when it gets to be the busiest.
Yeah. All right, let's talk a little bit about the top-down approach. I've got a number of questions here because it's a very wide range of topics we could talk about. I guess the overall synopsis of the top-down approach is that you're predicting where a line is going to go. or at least where a line's going to close at, so you can get closing line value. Like, it's a very general question. You've probably been asked it like a million times, and it's probably like a hard question to answer, but like, how on earth do you know where a line is going to go?
Yeah, it's really just all about reading a screen. Everybody has access to the same information we do. It's just a Don Best screen. And, looking at the different markets for all the different books around the world, trying to see how liquidity flows into a market. Again, like there's obviously the way that we make money, and then there's other groups out there who are truly originators, who are the ones moving the screen, and that's not us, but you can make money off of them moving the screen. So if you constantly see that, for example, college basketball second half totals, you constantly see that they're filtering the liquidity in a certain order through different books, then you can kind of get ahead of what they're going after. And different groups specialize in different things. Some groups are great at second half college basketball totals. Some groups are great at college football first half sides. It's different derivatives, different groups, and just trying to figure out how that liquidity goes into the market and trying to get in as those lines are moving.
Do you like take note, or do you record these movements over like a certain sample size, or is it just, I guess, the eye test? Like, you just see the same thing over and over, and you can just, recognize patterns?
For me, I have to write everything down. I've got our head trader. His name's Jason. He's got this like photographic memory, and he can tell you how liquidity, went into the market 2 weeks ago on a certain sport, a certain derivative. But for me, I really got to write it down and just be like, okay, things are floating in this way through, for this derivative, this sport, it's going in bet STS and it's going in heritage, and then they're faking Pinnacle the wrong way, and then they're moving Circa, and this is the way it's going in. But then for this other sport, they're actually hitting Pinnacle first because Pinnacle's limits are higher, and they're constantly changing it too. Cause we're basically sometimes front running their orders, so, if we see them faking a market the wrong way, we may go destroy the market knowing that they're faking it. And then it's a cat and mouse game, right? Then they stop faking it, and then they go the real side right up from the beginning. And, we kind of get caught with our pants down, but, that's all part of trading, is just trying to figure out which way the market's going to go, get in there while the market's going. And, and all about the closing line value. At the end of the day, if you're laying 130 and the market's closing minus 150, plus 130, you're going to make money.
Yeah, I've heard you say that term before, front running an order. It sounds like the most like ludicrous thing to say. If you just approached like, some generic sports bettor, or, someone that just does this for fun, like, and say that you can, I guess, front run someone that's very sharp order and understand where they're going to bet. Like, it sounds completely ludicrous, but like, it's pretty amazing that you guys can notice these patterns and, I guess, bet on them over time.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, you always hear that rule, 10,000 hours. I mean, we've got, I don't know, 20,000, 30,000 hours into this of literally just looking at a screen, seeing how liquidity flows into the market for the different sports and the different derivatives. And a lot of it's kind of, old hat at some point. You just have seen it happen so many times. Things change a little bit each year, but overall, you kind of see the same things play out.
Yeah, I mean, that was going to be one of my next questions, was like, if you had to sum everything up into like how you guys have an edge, is it literally just hours in front of a computer or a screen, I guess?
Yeah, I would say hours in front of a screen specifically is definitely how we've like gained our edge. I mean, it's the other thing is too, is like, people are like, why doesn't everybody do that? It sounds like what you guys do is not that complex. I mean, I think it is a little bit more complicated than maybe I'm making it sound to be, but also it's extremely labor intensive. You're talking about during football season, four guys working 80 to 100 hours a week per guy. It's very capital intensive. We're, even by doing all of this, we're still gaining just such a small edge. We're pushing a sub 1% edge on our trading. So, the swings that come with a sub 1% edge are a very real thing. It's not like we just win every weekend. We have losing months. We go on pretty crazy downswings, and the capital that you need to get enough volume into play where 1% is meaningful is a lot. And then also the capital you need to sustain the downswings of pushing a sub 1% edge is quite a bit as well.
Yeah, I mean that's scary stuff when you're talking about an edge that small. Like, is it emotionally tolling at times? Like, there must be times when you're really worried, because it really doesn't take much for a sub 1% edge to turn into a long-term negative edge.
Yeah, I mean, I guess during downswings, yeah, you kind of start to question yourself and like, oh, geez, like, are we doing something wrong, or has the game changed? I don't know. I think here lately, I've definitely been able to handle the downswings a little bit better than before. Um, I don't know though. It definitely affects the traders, and it definitely affects all of us for sure.
Yeah, and you talked a little bit about before, like, not like recording people's movements. Like, you don't do that from memory, you actually write all that stuff down. It's probably a stupid question, but is there like anyone, maybe on the Don Best screen, I've never really used one before, but is there like some kind of like database or something where you can go back and record certain movements, or check out data from like archive data, I guess, seeing when?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can definitely. There definitely is a feature on there called archives where you can see exactly what time certain different books moved, and we will look at that to see kind of what books ticked first. Because I mean, you're talking about a matter of seconds too. Like if you're not looking at the first half of the DeQuesne college basketball total, you don't know who moved first. So that's when it's good to kind of look at the timestamps of, all right, this book moved at such and such times 12 seconds, and this one moved 2 seconds later, and kind of see which way it flowed in. But other than that, other than the archive function, there's not a lot of stuff in there that I use. A lot of the tools that they have, I think, are a little clunky and not. I understand the purpose that they're trying to serve, but I don't think they're that great at it.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess when you're going through those like losing runs and, like you said, working with a smaller ROI, are you just looking at like, if you're going through a bad patch and you're like, well, is this because I'm bad at what I'm doing, or is it just because of variance? Like, are you just looking at whether you're beating the closing line, or is there other things you're looking at too?
Yeah, I mean, absolute number one thing we look at is closing line value. To us, that's everything. Like if you're getting closing line value, in the end, you should win. The only thing that we may change during a downswing is to try to price improve a little bit more. So, inevitably what happens, and I'll use a baseball game as an easy example, just because you're talking about money lines. But let's say that you're on average laying minus 135. And a market is closing minus 155 plus 130. So you got vig free there of approximately 140. Okay, so you're laying 135. You should have theoretical edge there of 5 cents. You could turn that into an ROI probably of about 2%. In those situations, like, we should be showing a theoretical hold of 2%. But if we're on a bit of a downswing, we'll start looking to try to buy some back at like plus 138, plus 139, even though on paper that plus 138, plus 139 looks negative EV. Again, going back to the big free being 140, we'll start trying to buy some back and buy down our position just to price improve that minus 135. If we have a 5K long position at minus 135 and we're able to take back 3K at plus 138, well, now you're turned 5K at minus 135 into 2K at like minus 132 and a half or so. So during those downswings, we may take some back to kind of reduce positions, but also just to make our prices even better than they were in the original position. There was a lot of kind of like math there, and hopefully that wasn't too confusing, but.
Yeah, well, half the problem is I've got no idea about American odds. I understand, like, at least you don't even know what odds it is exactly, but it's just more so the differences in the price. I understand the bigger the minus, the smaller the odds. That's all that really matters. But is there like a general rule you guys have in terms of buying back the other side, and I guess, I don't know, hedging out liability? Like, do you have any kind of general rules as to how you approach that? Is it like, I don't know, maybe a certain amount of liability on one side?
I mean, our general rule is trying to buy back as much as we possibly can at neutral EV or better. In that situation, if we can establish truly what we feel like the big free line is, the thing is too, is different books have different lines. So establishing what big free is, like you can't just like always look at Pinnacle. You can't always look at Chris, like you've got to take a market approach and look at, 10 different books, come up with a consensus line, take the big free off of that. But in general, if we can buy back at big free or better on the other side, we're looking to buy back. I mean, we're not in this game like trying to embrace variance. I'm happy to have a neutral position that wins $150 no matter which team wins, Now I don't want to trade into that position and give up edge along the way. So in general, we're looking to buy back as much as we possibly can back to neutral, as long as we can, beat consensus big free or better.
Yeah. Okay. And when it comes to closing lines, I understand that it's different for each sport in terms of, or probably even markets too, as to what's the most efficient, closing line. Can you maybe give like a general idea of, what sports are generally what closing lines people should be following, or which are the sharpest?
Yeah, I think the best thing to do really is just to look at liquidity. If Chris is taking 25K on a golf matchup, that's a very, very liquid line. That's all I'd want to look at for a closing golf matchup line. If Pinnacle is taking $500 on a college basketball total, like I'm really not looking at what that line closed at, because whatever sharp group is betting it, they're for sure betting the wrong side on Pinnacle, and they're going to make it look like it closed 137.5, when in reality, maybe the market closed 136, So I think you got to look at what sites are taking the most action and know that that's going to be the most accurate closing line. In general, like if you just wanted to look at one book, I mean, Chris is probably like a good 80% of the time rule of thumb.
Yeah. Okay. And is there like a general liquidity number? I know this is probably, it's a bit of a stupid question, but like, is there like a number of amount of liquidity where you look at it and say like, that market is certainly not going to be inefficient, or at least is there a number where you look at it and anything over that you're like, yeah, that number's efficient, and if I beat that VIG free number, then I've definitely got CLV?
Yeah, I think you got to be really careful on CLV on, markets where maybe no book's taking more than $1,000, NASCAR matchups is like something that like rings a bell to me, where there's no book in the world that's taking more than $1,000 on NASCAR matchups. And if I was just trading into a naked position that was beating closing line value, I would worry if my edge was really what I thought it was. Honestly, 98%, 99% of our volume is in super liquid sports. So it's just not really a situation that comes up too often because we're trading such liquid markets.
Yeah, and in terms of sports, mate, with your approach, I guess when you come familiar enough with the sport and I guess the way your screen's moving, you could probably just bet any sport you want. Are you limiting yourself to a certain number of sports or types of sports?
Yeah, just because, there's only so many hours in a day and only so many of us. So we really don't trade much soccer. I know soccer is a huge market, and I know that there's a lot of edge there. And we have some friends that trade soccer that do really well at it. But that soccer is just not something we focus on. UFC, we don't really focus on. Tennis, we don't bet at all. It's really the main sports: NFL, college basketball, NBA, college football, baseball. It's just the main things that we're focusing on. And I mean, at the end of the day, we're a volume operation. Like if we're going to hold less than 1%, we've got to do a lot of volume to make, real money from this. So, going after those smaller sports where the limits are a lot smaller, now we may gain a 3 or 4% edge on them. But at the end of the year, us trading $100,000 of tennis volume in a year holding 4% is just not going to have an effect on our year.
Yeah. I listened to a podcast with yourself on Bet the Process with Rufus and Jeff Ma. It was a really good listen. I highly recommend anyone to go listen to it. But one of the things that you mentioned is you underperform your expected value by 50%. yeah, can you explain why that is? I mean, my assumption was maybe that maybe you're calculating your EV against like the non-VIG or the VIG, sorry, included, but I don't know. You explain.
Okay, this is just a theory, so like I don't have any way to prove this, but
All right.
this is something that keeps me up at night, and I've probably spent 1,000 hours trying to figure out. Because like at the end of the day, like you measure your closing line value, and you're like, all right, I should be holding 1.65, and I'm making up a number, but I should be holding 1.65%. Against this closing line value over this large sample. Why am I holding 0.85%? And the best thing that I can come up with is at the end of the day, we are rooting for the same exact side as the sharp groups who are originating action. And the sharp groups that are originating action, they're moving the market. And, we work with some of these groups. We see how much liquidity they're pumping into the market, and it's a lot of liquidity. And the best guess that I can come up with is that they're over moving markets. So let's say that, the Reds are playing the Yankees and the market opens -150 plus 130, and they come in and they bet the Yankees -150. They may move that line to -170 plus 150, but in reality, they moved it too far, 5 cents too far, and that's because not only they're pumping all the liquidity in, but other people are seeing the market move and they're getting in on the tail end of it and probably moving it, a bit too far. An even better example is a group like Right Angle Sports. Right Angle Sports, their information is incredible, but undoubtedly they're moving markets way further than what is actually, right. And that's not them moving the market. That's their, paying customer base that's moving that market. And, they're betting over 137 when the line opened 133, and it's closing 138. That over 137 is actually not plus EV. So I think my best guess is markets are moving a little bit further than where they should, and the closing line value that we think we have is just a little bit off, and it works out to our true edge being about half of what our theoretical edge is.
Yeah. Okay. No, it's very interesting because I think you said on that podcast that you thought that one day you would start to achieve your expected value, but then you realize after $1 billion in turnover that maybe that's not not what happening. Is that like?
Yeah, I've given up on that dream.
I mean, you mentioned RAS. Is it RAS Sports? Did you say?
Yeah, Right Angle Sports.
Yeah. Sorry. They're like a tout service or something, aren't they?
Yeah, as far as I know, I think they're the only tout service that really wins. I mean, I don't know. I'm not really qualified to say that, but I can tell you that I've subscribed to their stuff and their information moves really hard and it seems to be really good.
Like, is that like a strategy in itself, do you think? Like following tipsters or touts that are like so popular, or maybe, they become so popular because they're very good that you can almost hit the other side.
So Right Angle Sports, we do subscribe to them, but it's not for betting the front end. We only subscribe to them to buy back the other end of it. So, they'll come out with, DeQuesne at Central Connecticut State over 133. The market will go to like 140. I mean, it's crazy how hard these guys move these lines, and like the reality is that the line should be like 136.5, and then, the over 133 was certainly plus EV. But the under 140 is also equally plus EV.
Yeah.
So that's why we subscribe to Right Angle. It's so hard to get in. I mean, I would love to bet the over 133, but it's so hard to get in when they release these plays to actually get in and get the price, because the whole world is on fire when they're releasing this play. You basically need a bot to get it down. And, within a millisecond, the thing's at 136, and it's like, you've missed your chance. So like the only chance to make money now is wait for, Joe Schmo public to bet over 138.5, and get a few books to go up to 140.
Yeah, no, I've seen similar things with myself, like just tipsters in the UK or in Europe. Like you see them tip something at 1.7 and yeah, you might check in, because I'm asleep most of the time. And then you check in the morning, it's 1.4, and you're just like, surely, I mean, it just baffles me that people can be. It's just a shame. People are just uneducated, aren't they? About like if someone tips something at 1.7, that it's probably not a good idea to probably keep backing it when it's like 1.5.
5, yeah. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, people, if they lose at sports betting, they want somebody else to blame. They don't want it to be their own pick they're blaming. And,
Yeah.
I have some friends that bet recreationally, and they always love to tell me that they don't pay juice when they win. They're like, I'll be like, dude, you can't lay 2-1 here. They're like, you only pay juice when you lose, Shane.
Love it. So I guess like summarizing, I've asked this kind of question already, but like, do you think if you were like starting out today and you wanted to become a professional sports bettor, or maybe you just wanted to, I guess, start betting and you wanted to have a certain approach, would you recommend your approach to people starting out or wanting to become a professional over like modeling or handicapping or anything like that?
Yeah, I think handicapping and modeling you're talking about, maybe 10 people out there that can really do it. I mean, what we do is pretty, well, I'll tell you what, it's a lot easier than modeling and handicapping. I don't want to say that it's easy because I don't want to discount what we do on a daily basis, but it's a lot easier than modeling and handicapping. I mean, the fact of the matter is at the end of the day, you have to beat minus 110 juice. And, unlike the stock market, where if you make a trade costs $9.99, no matter how much you're trading. With sports betting, you got to lay 110 regardless if you're betting $5 or 50 grand. And that minus 110 is so hard to overcome that really the only way that you can overcome it is with a top-down approach, with access to a lot of different books, being very price sensitive and, trying to trade in and out of positions. I don't think sports betting is really beatable from any other approach, minus the 10 to 15 people that can handicap sports profitably. And the thing is too, is a lot of these handicappers, you'll see them. I mean, they'll win, a couple of years in a row, and then whatever edge they had, whatever variable that they have in their model, the sports book picks up on it and they lose that edge, whereas a top-down approach, what we're doing year after year after year, we're going to win. It's going to make money.
Yeah, but your point kind of explains how hard it is and why the reason is like most people, well, I don't know what the statistic is nowadays, but it's normally something around 1% of people are profitable from sports betting, because I guess you're saying don't do handicapping because it's too hard, and, 10 or 15 people probably make money from this around the world. And then you've got, your approach, which you're saying is like, hugely labor intensive, money intensive too. Like, it's a tough industry, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really, I mean, if a kid was graduating college and came to me and was like, hey, I'm really passionate about sports, I love football, or, I love sports, I can name you every player on a team, I want to be a professional sports bettor, I would tell them to use that energy and whatever skills they have at something else. Sports betting is just so hard to beat on the professional side of it. Honestly, if somebody was really passionate about sports betting, I would tell them to try to go work for a sports book. I mean, I always joke, it's like, geez, these sports books, they're holding 6%. Like I'd cut off a finger to hold, 6%. Like, we fight claw and tooth and nail to hold less than 1%. So, being on the book side is the side you want to be on, not on the betting side of things. And, with so much expansion going on in the US, expanding into all these new states and all these new books popping up, if somebody was looking to get into sports betting, I would recommend them go work for one of the new books popping up, because I think that's the side of the counter you want to be on.
I don't know how long you've been a professional for, but like, would you, if you could go back, I don't know, 5-10 years or whatever it is when you got started, like, do you reckon you'd do it all over again?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I definitely would. I mean, it's been so good to me, and I'm really blessed to have had a lot of success from it. But I think if I was coming into it today, I don't think I would go down that road today. I think, the best days are probably Probably behind us. I mean, my edge has definitely shrunk every single year. Now my volume has increased. But I think if I was starting today and I was looking at this and looking at a sub 1% edge, which is the reality, I don't think I would want to go into this as a career.
Yeah, fair enough, mate. Your relationship with originators or modelers, handicappers, I guess people like yourself are coined steam chasers, and originators essentially don't like you for the most part. Can you maybe explain like why originators, don't like you?
Yeah, I mean, with that said, we have a lot of relationships with originators. Like we're pretty valuable to originators because what they're really good at is they're really good at trying to figure out, where lines are off, which is not what we specialize in. Where we specialize is actually getting the action down at the best prices possible. So there's a pretty happy marriage actually between originators and guys like us. And we have a good relationship with, I don't know, at least half of the originators out there that are truly beating sports. For the guys that we don't have a relationship with, the reason why they don't like us is that, once we figure out how they are getting the action down, we try to front run them. Like I don't owe it to, XYZ person in whatever location that they are. If they're trying to fill a baseball order, I don't owe it to them to leave the market quiet to them. I don't have access to the information. I have access to a screen, which they have access to. And if I see them moving a screen in a particular way over and over again, at the end of the day, we're trying to make money just like they're trying to make money. And if I can go front run their order, we're going to go front run them. Which drives them crazy, of course. So I think that I think there's two types of people that give steam chasers or board cleaners, whatever you want to call it, a bad name. I think one are the people that truly are originating and probably are winning. We make their job a lot more difficult, so they're not very happy with us. I think the second type of person is the type of people that think that the way money should be made beating sports is that you actually need to be able to handicap a game. And that they just discount what we do. And I don't know if it's jealousy or what, but they don't think it's right that we should be able to make a living just trading a board and not actually knowing a player on the Washington Nationals baseball team. And I don't know, it's not my position to try to defend what we do or anything like that. We try to operate ethically and honestly. And I think the relationships we have with our current partners are really happy with that. And again, I'm just trying to make a living. I don't get caught in the Twitter battles that sometimes you see where people are calling people steam chasers and stuff. If people want to call us that, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Do you see them, like you mentioned like a cat and mouse game before, like are they like constantly changing the way they bet things, I guess, if they're noticing that you're taking their liquidity, I guess?
Yeah. And I mean, once we figure out how they're filtering liquidity in, we're going to try to front run their order, but we are also going to try to front run their order in a way that it doesn't look like we're front running their order. I mean, if we just went out and let's say hit Chris, which is like the most recognizable line, on a screen, probably, like, let's say that we know they're trying to bet the over, but they're betting the under to start to get the line to move. And really what they want the over, like, we're not going to go out and hit Chris for the over. We're going to go hit all of our quiet outs on the over, and slowly filter our liquidity in. And in a perfect world, we would filter our liquidity in really quietly. And then when they do start moving the screen, we move alongside them. I think that is in our best interest long-term, is to not make it obvious that we're front running their order. I think if we just, rip our order in front of them, they're not going to put their liquidity in the same way. Now, sometimes, liquidity doesn't flow perfectly. Sometimes you hit what you think is a quiet out and it's not as quiet as you think. And, we kind of get caught that we're front running their order. And in those situations, absolutely, they change what they're doing. They'll start hitting different books. They'll start hitting different books first, or instead of them faking the market, say that in that same situation, when they hit that under first, the under is the real side that they want, and then we'll go hit the over and that thing will just keep going under and we kind of get caught with our pants down. But yeah, it's a cat and mouse game. I mean, they're doing what's best for them, trying to make the most money possible. We're doing what's best for us, and it's kind of like poker players playing poker against each other. Like at the end of the day, we're both just trying to make money, and we're trying to take steps to combat them, and they're trying to take steps to combat us, and it's a fun game.
If they don't try and manipulate the market in any way, so if they want, Rafael Nadal versus Roger Federer, let's say they want to bet Rafael Nadal at 2 in odds. If that's what they want, and Rafael Nadal's at 205 or 2, something like that, if they just go straight ahead, they don't manipulate the market in any way and go straight to betting Rafael Nadal, is there like any way that you can predict that's going to happen and front run their order?
Not really front run. I would say kind of get in alongside them.
Yeah.
Okay. If they're taking their order to market, I mean, most of these originators are using bots. That's the reality of the situation. So it's not like they're hitting one book one by one, and this happens over the course of 8 minutes. This is all happening in a 30-second window, and it's a mad dash for the bookies to move their lines. It's a mad dash for the originator to get down all of his action. And it's a mad dash for groups like us to try to get in alongside the originator. So in those situations, we're really not front running them. We're trying to get in alongside them, and I think that specific situation you're mentioning right there is where that term steam chasing comes in. We're seeing the steam on the board and we're chasing that steam, that's really where that term is applicable. And I mean, I would say we are guilty in those situations.
Yeah. And I heard Spanky, who's got a very similar, basically the same approach to what you guys do, on a podcast last week. I think it was Circles Off podcast. And he was saying, you either work with me or you work with me. So how does that, you mentioned that you work with the originators, or at least you're in contact with them. Like, how does that conversation go? Because I assume at first they probably hate your guts, but then eventually they've realized that it's probably best if we work together.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely established some relationships with some originators who, came to us and said, hey, like, we know that you move in the market on our orders, screw you guys or whatever. That has definitely happened. I don't know. I think at the end of the day, like, we just try to operate in a nice fashion. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not looking to have pissing battles with guys. I don't have any ego battles with guys. And I think that we really value our reputation in the industry. And I think if any group, asks around about us, I mean, it's a small group of network of people you're talking about. You're talking about really maybe 20 groups that make a living betting sports. So, if we work with 8 of those, then the other 12 groups, we may not have a direct relationship with them, but they're asking around about us. And I would hope that any group that does work with us would be like, oh yeah, Shane and those guys. Yeah, those guys are nice guys. They treat us right or whatever. So I think that's how those relationships happen, and I'm good friends with Spanky, and what Spanky does is, pretty much identical to what we do. He does it on a much larger scale. And honestly, he's a lot better at what he does than what we do. I respect Spanky a heck of a lot.
Yeah, nice, mate. A couple more questions. I wanted to ask selfishly, because I guess Trademate Sports, our software is like basically the exact same as what you guys do, except we're manipulating, I guess, the soft books that are too slow at changing their prices. You mentioned like a few of the, I guess, the problems with steam chasing, or, getting on inefficient prices. Would you say like the main thing, or I guess like the main negative to this approach is that like maybe markets like Pinnacle producing, I think you've mentioned college basketball or football, where the liquidity is not that great. So basically, groups or originators will manipulate the market and, bet the unders. If they want to bet the overs, they bet the unders just to get an even bigger price and more liquidity, I guess, on the overs. Would you say that's like one of the main problems with steam chasing, the main things you have to be aware of?
Yeah, I definitely think that would be probably number one. I think a close second, though, honestly, is the connotation of steam chasing with bookies. Like if you're constantly chasing steam and you're betting into local bookies, you're going to have problems. Local bookies hate that. If you're betting into even national sports books, and they see that every time you make a bet, their screen looks like a Christmas tree on the game that you're betting, they're going to hate that as well. So I think the second biggest thing is that you're risking accounts and risking relationships by steam chasing. So I think those are the two things. Definitely getting faked out, I would say, is number one, because pretty much every group these days is faking markets before they take something to market. And then I would say the second thing is just the risk of losing accounts and relationships.
Yeah, no, great answer, mate. It's really interesting. I'm sure, a lot of the people that are listening or, have listened to the podcast have used Trademate too. So I think that's definitely some valuable insight for people listening in. Lastly, it's a pretty general question I ask everyone that comes on the podcast. How could someone who's found an edge, or someone that's been successful in their betting for a while, how could they take their betting to the next level?
The number one thing I would say is just having access to as many outs as possible. That's even something that I think that we're not perfect at today, and something we're constantly striving to get better at. The more outs you have, the better prices you're going to get and the more successful you're going to be. If you currently have 5 outs, try to find a way to get 10 outs. If you have 10 outs, try to find a way to get 20 outs. You talk about a guy like Spanky, and when I tell you that he's more successful and he does better than us, I would say the number one reason is due to relationships and the number of outs he has. I mean, Spanky probably has 10 times as many outs as we do, and that's a lot more places with a lot different prices that he can get access to. I think the number one thing people underestimate is how important a penny or 2 pennies is. A penny is 0.5%. If you're currently holding 1% and on all of your prices going forward, you could get a penny better. Now you're holding 1.5%. 2 pennies is 1%. So every penny adds up, and having access to as many books as you can is the number one thing that's going to enable you to get a penny or 2 pennies better price on average. So I think that's the biggest thing, more than anything else.
Is it hard for someone like yourself to get people's accounts, or at least build relationships in a way that people might bet for you, or anything like that, just because they know that maybe you're not taking, sometimes you're almost hedging your position and buying back on the other side, and that your plays aren't huge EV, or maybe they're just neutral EV?
Yeah, that is definitely a problem. And honestly, I go to people up front. I just tell them hey, look, we're a really, really low margin business. I don't recommend taking 1% of our action. Let me pay you on volume. I try to pay everybody on volume, just because the swings of holding a sub 1% edge are so extremely high that I don't want partners to come in and give me an account and be upset with me that, they lost money on this account. I'd rather just pay them a fixed fee on volume and say, look, I'm going to give you, X% on every volume we put into this account. I'm comfortable with the margin. I know long-term that I am going to hold that, call it 0.8%. And I know that if I pay them, say 0.1 or 0.2%, that I'm going to be in good shape. And at the end of the day, they're also going to be in good shape. So honestly, we don't go to anybody and try to get them to take 1% of the action, because I just don't, that's not what I recommend. I recommend the volume approach.
Yeah, no, really interesting answer, mate. It's been a pleasure having you on. I've found this a real fascinating conversation. I'm sure our listeners and watchers have too. Maybe just mention to people, we've got the Twitter handle down the bottom there for people watching on YouTube. But maybe just mention to people where they can find you, and any exciting projects or anything you want to mention or promote. Go for gold.
I don't have anything exciting to promote. I do try to stay a little bit active on Twitter, and I try to post mainly about sports betting stuff. I spend the summers working on real estate and spend time with my family, and then I dive really deep into sports betting during the fall. So during the summer, my Twitter account stays kind of quiet, but this football season, I'll be posting plenty of stuff in there. So give it a follow, and thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
No, anytime, mate. That's at S Sigsbee, I guess best way to say it. But thanks for coming on, mate. Thanks everyone for listening. Make sure to do a quick rate and review of the podcast if you can, and subscribe to us wherever you listen. And if you're watching on YouTube, give it a like, subscribe, all the good stuff. Thanks once again, Shane. And maybe one day we'll catch up soon when you've got the ROI over 1%, mate.
I wouldn't hold my breath.
when you start achieving that expected value. All right. See you, mate.
Thank you. See ya. Bye.